And you? Did you bring something to do? Good. Joshua is too. He's looking forward to it. He's looking forward to seeing you. You lost Tina, a whole Tina. You lost a whole person. We can start yelling. I don't even remember right now.
You texted me.
Okay. Oh, yes.
You see by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, through our stars and bright stars, through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we
you so much. We are so thankful for all the blessings that you pour out on people. Father, we thank you for your mercy. Father, we thank you for your love. And Father, most of all, we thank you that you allow us to serve you. Lord, we ask that you bless this week, that you bless each person that's here, Father. We thank you for the wisdom and discernment that you pour out on your people, Father, especially the leaders. Lord, we ask that you just fill this place with your presence tonight. Father, you are such a good Father, such a good God. We just thank you so much for everything you do for us. Lord, we ask that you bless this week. We ask that you bless our county, our community, Lord. We ask that you bless those that sacrifice their time and their energy to serve you and your government. Father, we just ask that no one leaves here the same as they go in. Father, we just ask that your presence now to all of you. Father, we just love you so much. We just give this night to you. And we say thank you in advance for each prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
And we get it now. Even to the baby.
Yes.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the great state of Texas. Honor the Texas
Flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
If I could have all of our veterans stand, please. And if we could have their spouses now stand so we can also celebrate them. Thank you guys for serving. Tonight we have two speakers, so I'm not going to be up here really long. We're going to turn it over to Linda first. Next month we also have a twofer, a wonderful organization, Protect the Children. MASA, Mothers Against Sexual Abuse, has reached out to do a soft launch of their new documentary, speaking for the victims of incest and child sexual abuse. And I think this is something everybody needs to be aware of and be able to look and see if it's happening in your neighborhood or anywhere around you. After that, we have Mace Middleton coming in. He's going to speak to us for a little bit. He can't be here till around 7:30, so we may have just a little bit longer meeting than normal, but Mace wanted to come and address all you guys. Tonight, we also have two speakers. They're in a runoff. Let me think about this. They're in a runoff. They're in the primary, and they're in a runoff with the challenger. Both of these guys are really great. You want to do that first? Oh. Sorry guys, Tina and I didn't have much time together. She's been out of town, so we're not together here. So we have our two speakers tonight. They're both in a runoff challenge in the May election, and they wanted to come to Hood County. I don't know if you guys realize this or not, but Hood County, percentage for population, is one of the top counties in getting out the vote. We need to be proud because we beat out some big places, so that's a good deal. Our first speaker tonight is we're going to have. Okay, let's go ahead and do this. We're going to have a door prize. We're going to do our door prizes. And for those that aren't here all the time, we do pass two baskets around. This is how we are able to keep this club up and go in and do the different charities and things that we do, maintenance, those kind of things. So if you do, it doesn't matter what it is, few dollars, few quarters, few whatever it is, just throw it in the basket. The number is 1184. Oh, all right. So since we're nearing Easter, we've gone out and got this cute little bunny for you guys. Actually, Tina went out and got this cute little bunny for you guys. So the number is, I didn't get a good one. 1160. All right, great. I'm going to do this one. And because this one was late, I was supposed to have had this last month. This was donated by Richard and Mary Haddocks. And it's a little late for Christmas, but it'll be great next year. And this is the ornament that was the Texas Congress. This is the ornament they use. So this is, yeah, so this is really beautiful. And it's quite. One, 202. One, 202. They came and ate and left. Is this yours? 1204. Yep. Okay. 1167.
Do I
Thank
need to
you,
check
guys.
his ticket?
Yeah, look at his ticket. I think he's good.
Are y'all ready for our first speaker? If you're a delegate for the convention this Saturday, it's been moved to Generations Church at 10 a.m. That was 9. 10? Oh, good to know. Doors open at 9:30. Convention, county convention this Saturday, Generations. Okay, our first speaker this evening is Thomas Smith. He is a lifelong conservative with deep Republican roots. From clerking for a legendary conservative chief justice to serving a decade in Attorney General Ken Paxton's office as a special assistant attorney general for criminal justice, Thomas has fought for conservative values. He helped ban sanctuary cities, wrote tough anti-human trafficking laws, yay, protected churches from radical LGBT lawsuits, and drafted the law banning online solicitation of children. A 2020 Trump delegate who worked on election integrity, he strongly backs law enforcement and victims' rights. He and his wife Audrey are raising their 2 children in Dallas and attend Highland Park United Methodist Church. Thomas will bring conservative common sense justice to the highest criminal court in Texas, stopping activist judges and keeping our families safe. So let's welcome, where'd he go? Right in front of me? All right, let's welcome Thomas Smith.
Thank you all very much. If y'all can't hear me in the back, just yell at me, please. All right. My name is Thomas Smith. I am running in the May runoff for the Court of Criminal Appeals, Place 3, one of the 4 statewide runoffs, and I'm so glad that y'all are going to get to hear from Beau French here in just a little bit as well. He's fantastic. It's always good to have more than just a couple of minutes to speak. You know, you go to a Republican meeting or you go to a forum, a lot of times you only get a minute or two, and telling a lawyer they can only talk for a minute or two it's like telling a Democrat they can only vote once. So it's nice to have a little bit of time here tonight. In Hood County gave me and gave Beau our highest percentage of the vote of any county in the state of Texas. So thank you all so much for that. Awesome. Let's do it one more time. And that's no coincidence, because the caliber of people that are here in Hood County, the caliber of people that care so much about our country and our state. And I think y'all realize, maybe more than any other county in Texas, how much our country is under attack and how much our state is under threats. And it's a testament to y'all how much you care about it, that you're willing to get out and work for good conservatives who want to keep this state safe, who want to keep our country the way it is, who want to save our country. I grew up in a very, very remote part of Appalachia, pretty similar to where J.D. Vance grew up, in southern Ohio. Little town of 400 people, third poorest county in the state. It's actually a lot worse than where J.D. grew up. He grew up in Middletown. It's about 20,000 people. There weren't even 20,000 people in the county where I grew up. And my dad worked in the oil and gas fields there. He also built the house that I grew up in. And my mom was a public school teacher. She also was a teenage mom twice, at 15 and 17 with my sisters. You can imagine what that's like growing up in the late 50s. Despite that, she graduated from high school before she turned 18. She graduated from college with a bachelor's degree in education before she turned 20. By the time she was 20, she had 3 kids with my dad. She was teaching school full-time. She was an incredible woman. I got my work ethic from her in a little poor town that we grew up in. And I mention all that because my life has been an example of the American dream, the opportunities that you get in this country, no matter where you grow up or no matter what your circumstances are. You can do great things in this country. And I became the first person to graduate from law school in my family and went on to be invited to be the law clerk for the Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court. He was a legendary judge. He was Chief Justice there for 24 years. He was on the short list when David Souter was nominated to the Supreme Court. Suffice to say, he would have been a far better choice. He was a good, conservative, principled man, the exact kind of person you would want to sit on the bench. And the Supreme Court building in Columbus is named after him. And after that, I came to Texas as fast as I could. And for the last 10 years, I've had the honor of working for conservative fighter Ken Paxton in the Texas Attorney General's office. And you all know this. We fight for you, but not only do we fight for you, we win for you. And that matters. We get wins. We have gotten a lot of wins over the last 10 years. And that matters because we have helped save Texas. And that dream, the American dream of opportunity that I just mentioned a couple minutes ago, is something that we've seen be under attack every day in the AG's office from a number of directions, from radical leftists, what I call a new age communism that has infected this country. And we fight against that every day in the AG's office. And against radical judges and activist courts who have fueled that, including this court. This court has been part of that. This is our state Supreme Court for criminal cases. One of only two of its kind in the country. Oklahoma has the other. This is the court. I'm going to mention a case that y'all have heard of in just a second, but I'm going to mention one other one first. 12 years ago, this is how long the problems of this court have been going on. 12 years ago, this court threw out our state's online solicitation law, banning online solicitation of kids by child predators. They called it a violation of the First Amendment. They threw it out as unconstitutional. The state of Texas went a year and a half without having a law that could be prosecuted for online solicitation, thanks to this court. The legislature had to step in and fix it. Not knowing that I would run for this court 11 years later, I actually worked on the legislative fix for that with the Texas legislature, and it's still held up as constitutional today. Why am I talking about a case that was thrown out 12 years, what was decided 12 years ago, 13 years ago now? Because this court, 12 years later, is still granting relief to sex offenders who were convicted under that old law, despite the fact there has been intervening Supreme Court precedent that would allow them to stop doing that. Last October, they granted relief to a sex offender who was convicted in 2012 of sending explicit pictures to a 14-year-old girl. This is your all-Republican Court of Criminal Appeals, everybody. You would think that we would have 9 solid conservatives on it, because this is Texas. And we don't even have 5. We have about 4 that you can count on. And they give you decisions like that. They threw out our Open Meetings Act law as unconstitutional a few years ago. And in a case that I think most of you, if not all of you, have heard of, they took away the power of our office to prosecute election fraud in 2021. And in 2022, just to use one example in Harris County, they had problems with multiple elections. The county judge's election there, she got 67% of the mail-in ballots in 2022. There was no state authority that could look into that thanks to this court. Now, the legislature just restored that authority last summer. Well, what does that mean? It means that the new law could get challenged again, and guess what court it could end up at? My opponent, who was a nice person and a talented lawyer, happens to be the head lawyer for the judge that wrote that decision that took away our power to prosecute election fraud. That's my opponent. She got a little more votes than I did in the primary. It is no stretch to say that the future of election integrity in the state of Texas could come down to my race. It is no stretch to say that. And if, as my boss says, if we lose election integrity, we lose everything. He's absolutely right about that. Now, I mentioned that we get a lot of wins in our office, and y'all can read, we're in the news a lot about all the lawsuits that we filed and that kind of thing. I want to talk about some wins that we've gotten that aren't in the news quite as much. It was alluded to in the introduction. We work with the legislature a lot, and that's a lot of what I've done. I was one of 2 lawyers in our office who worked with the legislature to make sure our sanctuary cities law that came out of the legislature and was signed by the governor was constitutional. It passed every constitutional test. We did pass a law to protect churches from being sued by LGBTQ organizations if churches were in the adoption business and wanted to make adoptions according to their own religious beliefs. That law law survived every constitutional test. We did work on the online solicitation law. We did fight for election integrity. We need that perspective on this court. We have 6 people on this court that used to work for DA's offices. We have 3 Republicans, at least they ran as Republicans, criminal defense lawyers. It's a great experience, it's fine. We do not have one person on this court that has ever had the experience of making sure that a law was constitutional from the time the first word of that law was written. And why is that important? It's important because this is a constitutional court every bit as much as it is a criminal law court. The election integrity decision that I mentioned, the election fraud prosecution decision I mentioned, was decided on constitutional grounds. The online solicitation case was decided on constitutional grounds. You need somebody who has a background in constitutional law, someone who has actually written laws with an eye towards making sure that they survive those tests. There's no one on this court that has that experience. And it's experience that this court badly needs. And I mentioned those things for one other reason, which is a lot of times when judicial candidates run, they run on the resume. And that's all they talk to you about, is their legal resume. Let me tell you, everybody running for a statewide judicial position is going to have a really good legal resume. They've gone to a good law school. They've done a lot of good things. They work for judges. My opponent's worked for a judge. She's worked for a liberal judge. She's worked for a judge. Ketanji Brown Jackson has a lot of legal qualifications. You have to ask yourself one more question, and thankfully in the state of Texas we get to vote for our judges. What have you actually done? What accomplishments do you have? That's why I bring up sanctuary cities. That's why I bring up the adoption bill that we passed. That's why I bring up working as an election integrity lawyer for Donald Trump. Because those things are important, and they're especially important because we're running in a Republican primary. Just because you're running for a judicial position does not mean that you have to stop talking about being involved in the Republican Party. Being involved in conservatism and Republican Party matters, and it really matters, I would argue, more in a judicial position than almost any other, because when we get elected to the bench, you're not going to hear much from us. You're going to expect us to go do our jobs. You're going to hear in the news about people like Beau French and the Railroad Commission, about the Attorney General, about the legislature, about the governor. You're not going to hear so much about the courts. You're going to have to trust us to be solid and dependable and to do our jobs. And for too long, we have had judges in this country who have run as Republicans or have posed as Republicans to get appointed. And they've let us down. The judge that I work for, I never saw him let people down. Sometimes he made decisions that people didn't agree with, but he was very consistent and dependable and conservative. And he knew the most important thing, which is when he got up in the morning to protect the Constitution, to work to uphold the rule of law, and he always understood that our ultimate wisdom came from our Creator. And that's what drove him every day. That's what will drive me on this bench. I'm going to mention one other thing, and I'd be glad to answer any questions after that. Check out my website, smithfortexas.org. I've got, I think, over 75 conservative endorsements from across the state. I've got about 20 that I have not added yet, including the Attorney General. We appreciate you checking that out and taking a look at it. Because the biggest endorsements that my opponent has gotten so far have been the Dallas Morning News, Houston Chronicle, the Austin American Statesman. I think there's a big contrast there. We are one good conservative judge away from giving y'all the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals that y'all have deserved for a long, long time. And I would ask for your vote and your help on May 26th and an early voting prior to that. Thank you all very much.
Well, I want to say this. If we don't protect our courts, we'll lose our state. So we have to protect our courts. And what he just said, we're 1 court away. So let's make it happen here in Hood County, okay? Or even you get hold to friends in other counties. Get hold of everybody. Let them know we need Thomas Smith on our court. Marietta?
You worked in the AG's office, and are you familiar with the law that prohibits You worked in the AG's office, and are you familiar with the law that prohibits devices connected to our infrastructure, our grid, that communicate through our grid they can't be foreign made or contained? Can you elaborate a little bit on that for us? Because we're dealing with that with BESS units here, with data centers, and with other things, and I'd love to hear from you exactly how we can fight those kinds of developments using the law that you were a party to passing.
It's actually a really good question because I did not know anything about that until last summer. And I had someone who's become a good friend out in Van Zandt County contact our office about that. They're dealing with this very similar issue out there. And we worked on that. It took a little bit of time, but now we're investigating it. There's an active investigation on that, and it is something that we're concerned about. It is something I think that the legislature needs to take up and take seriously. And it's certainly something that the next AG, I think, will be paying close attention to. We've actually kept, at least a couple of candidates advised on what we're doing on that. So, yep. Well, no. I can tell you a little bit about it. So one of the issues was the legislature passed a law that dealt with infrastructure and cyber-related infrastructure a couple of sessions ago, I think. And I think that it laid out certain parameters that were prohibited by outside entities, foreign influences, that kind of thing. It's not my area of legal expertise. However, the initial look at it was, this is something the legislature, this is why I mentioned the legislature, they need to take it up and look at tightening that up and putting the enforcement mechanism into it. There actually is no specific enforcement mechanism into it to say the AG's office has to do this. So if by default, a lot of those things fall to us. When I was involved in writing legislation, and some of the other folks in our office who have gone on to other things, we actually like to have that enforcement mechanism in there. That's one of the features of the Sanctuary Cities law. If y'all ever think that Granbury is a sanctuary city and you want to file a complaint, any of you in this room can do it. All you have to do is file it with our office, and it triggers a mandatory investigation. That's how we wrote the law. And also, I know Mays will talk about this when he comes here in a few weeks. If an investigation yields that an elected official or an appointed official has enabled a sanctuary policy to exist, the law requires the AG's office to seek the removal. Requires. It's not discretionary. It's mandatory. That law, in my view, my personal view, I'm stepping outside the candidate just to speak as a citizen, that hasn't been used enough. And I think in the future it's going to be, if we continue to have the problems with immigration we've had. Hi.
Hi there. I read this morning that in Dallas there's a new radio station, and it is an Islamic radio station. And it is geared to promote the Islamization of Texas and Sharia law. And I think we've got to be proactive and not reactive. Would you comment on that?
Yeah, sure. And I'm sure Bo will talk about this as well. He's become very much of an expert on talking about this kind of thing, but I'd be glad to talk about it. 2 quick points. Any legal system that is attempting to spread under the cloak of religion and is also completely at odds with our constitutional structure needs to be rejected in every single way possible.
Yes.
Every way possible. The First Amendment gives you the right to worship freely. It has never been construed. There is not a single case in the history of the United States that has ever interpreted the First Amendment to give a legal system cloaked under religion the authority to usurp our Constitution. That has never happened. And it must never be allowed to happen. Ever.
Well, she kind of touched on it. I just read, I think, did Governor Abbott just stop the development of Epic City up in the north part of Dallas? And, you know, what I've been reading is we can't use the Constitution protects so many things, the U.S. Constitution, that we can't discriminate against any group or anybody based on a religion. But where do we go with trying to say this is not, even if you want to call it a religion, these people are still can be considered terrorists. I don't think there's such a thing as a radical Muslim. I think they're all radical. It's in their books. It's in their belief. It's everything. So how do we stop that when our U.S. Constitution protects so much under the religion?
Yeah, so they love to fight at a local level. They love to push at a local level. And that battle starts here. It starts in Collin County, at a county level, a local level. It has to be engaged at that level. Because that's, I mean, they will fight to change names of streets. And then they'll move on to something else. And then they'll move on to something else. Before you know it, you know, there's an honor killing that happens, and somebody's lawyer walks into a court. This is a hypothetical. We deal with hypotheticals in law school. Someone engages in an honor killing, walks in, they have an activist judge at a county court in, say, Dallas County, and say, Judge, you know, we have an affirmative defense here. This is a religious, you know, kind of thing. How far are we from having a judge to sign off on that, right? And so, you know, to kind of bring it back to this court for a second, what happens if this court got a case like that, right? So, you know, you don't have to think very far in the future or jump through too many hoops to get to a point where you could actually be dealing with something like that. You better have the right judges on courts to interpret our Constitution accordingly, because here's the thing. Radical Islam, or however you want to couch it, okay? They're used to taking this much and turning it into this, and then turning it into that. I spent a summer in Israel in 2012. One of the things I learned over there is that the thing that matters most in that part of the world, maybe the only thing, is strength and respect. If you lack those two things, or one of those two things, you'll get run over. And so those are the things that have to be shown in the struggle that we're in. Yes?
Back to what they said about data centers, as far as having to have all U.S.-made equipment, can foreign companies own them?
Can who?
Foreign companies.
To my knowledge, there's nothing in state law, and I could be wrong, that it would prevent foreign companies from owning them.
Is that something you can address? Because, you know, even if they use American equipment, if they're being owned and run by foreign companies, what protection do we have?
Yeah, so the question is, could foreign companies own data centers, say, in the state of Texas? And I think the answer is they can. Whether they could not is up to your elected representatives to decide otherwise.
Anyone else?
Thank you all very much. So good to be here.
Since I got a little bit off my script a while ago, I have a couple of things that I want to talk about real quick. And one of them is about the, if y'all were here last month, we talked about 28 lots in our pecan plantation area that had now been purchased through EB5. And so that now has been taken up to the Attorney General. It's on his watch list, so he's going to be watching that. I was at a meeting a few nights ago with True Texas Project, and there was a lady there from RAIR, R-A-I-R. I hope you all know who they are. And it was quite interesting and quite revealing on a few things. Because one of the things I didn't know was through EB5 until I started looking into them, was these guys have to come in, the first thing they have to do, besides their money, is do investments. And so putting in jobs, putting different companies in. So that's one of the things that they have to do. So I want y'all to know that we had escalated that on up through our, I guess you'd call him elect Senator David Cook. David took that and went up to the Attorney General's office, and in that, they sent me back the Attorney General's office sent back a link to this group called New Roots. And New Roots, when I went out there to look at them, particularly sell pecan plantation. That's their only destination, their only property they're selling. And they're talking about how wonderful it is to live in a nice rural, gated country club place. So that's their only purpose. So I want you guys to know that, so I need to be on the lookout, because it looks like Cook County could be targeted right now for quite a few Muslims coming into pecan plantation. Okay, and one other thing I forgot, guys, is we have Scott London here tonight. I told Scotty we have 2-3 minutes. He's the Constitution guy. So he knows everything and everything about the Constitution.
Thank you. So I got a question. We all know HIPAA, right? We're familiar with HIPAA. You go into the doctor's office and you got to sign that form for HIPAA. And what is that? That's your right of privacy for your medical records, right? Okay, so we're familiar with that. Okay, now I got another question for the ladies. This is for the ladies, and this isn't for the men. And I assume with this group we can define and differentiate a man and a woman, right? Okay, good. Okay, women, who thinks you have the right to get pregnant? Now, I'm not asking if you're planning on it or if you did or if you're going to. You have a right. Which women have a right to get pregnant? I hope every woman did, right? Okay, good. And where in the Constitution do you get that right?
Oh, God.
The Constitution doesn't grant rights.
Okay, so
Jackie knows.
it is kind of in there. And so our founders, when they were drafting the Bill of Rights, they had this conversation, or at least one similar to this. And James Madison actually warned the first Congress that if we create a list of rights, that future generations might assume that those that are not listed were surrendered to the government.
Yes.
I mean, in his words, he actually said, by enumerating particular exemptions to the grant of powers, it would discharge those rights which were not placed in that enumeration. In other words, the danger of creating a list of rights is that someone might assume that if it's not listed, it's not there. So, they had a solution. What was their solution? Article 9, Article 9 of the Bill of Rights, Amendment 9, where in Amendment 9 says, the enumeration of the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
Yes.
In other words, just because it's not there doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The Constitution does not give us our rights. Isn't that right? It recognizes that we already have them, and if we forget that, we won't just lose the ones written down, we'll lose the ones we thought we did not have to defend. So don't forget to defend the rights that aren't listed. Thank you.
The other thing I forgot to mention tonight was our newly re-elected GOP chair.
Hey.
So, I was glad to give us a little overview of what happened in March.
I have notes because that's what I need. Hood County Republicans, yeah! Yeah! You So we had this election. We sure did. And before I get started, I do want to dispel a rumor real quick. So there is no truth to the rumor that on county commissioner court meeting days, Kathy Hayes is going to serve lunch. There's no truth to that rumor, although she can get rich doing it. It's time to kind of tone those back a little bit, Dave. Please. Anyway, so we had this election here in Hood County. Hood County is one of the top 50 counties out of 254 counties in terms of registered voters. So we're a player in regards to election and election day results. We really are. And we ought to be proud about that. One of the things that makes us even more of a player is that we typically produce more of a voter turnout than all of the other counties in the state. We're usually in the top 5. So in this particular case, this is an off-year primary election. We produced 29.25% voter turnout. So we exceeded the state average by more than 10%. So give yourself a hand. And we increased our voter participation from the last off-year cycle primary election by about 3 percentage points. So we did quite well in both of those measurements, and I just appreciate every one of you that worked so hard to get that done. I want to acknowledge one person that we, or most of the people in this room, really worked hard for, and I just want to congratulate our county judge-elect, Mark Lowry. Well done. Well done. He worked his tail off to get the job done, and I think most of us that are in this room are quite pleased with the results and look forward to January 1st when you take office. In any event, I just want to give you an idea of how Hood County performed very quickly. If you consider which people in each one of the Republican primary races we would consider more conservative, in every case, Hood County really outstripped what the state did in terms of performance on behalf of that candidate. For example, in the U.S. Senate race, John Cornyn statewide received 41.9% of the vote, and Paxton received 40.7% of the vote. But here in Hood County, Cornyn received 39.4% of the vote, and Paxton received 46.3% of the vote. And so, if you go down the ballot statewide, race by race, you will see that same type of thing taking place, which proves once again that Hood County is truly a really red Republican bastion, and there are a lot of other counties across the state of Texas that are actually looking at Hood County right now and saying, what are those guys doing? They're doing something right. And so I just want to, once again, want to congratulate you for all of what you all are doing right in terms of promoting conservative candidates here in Hood County. Thank you for that. And thank you, on my personal behalf, thank you for putting me back in office, I think. Marietta would disagree with that one for sure. I do want to say one thing before I leave, and that is this. So we have a general election coming up after this primary cycle, after the runoff cycle. We're going to kind of shift gears into a general election mindset. The Democrats here in Texas are energized. We have some critical races that are going to be coming up and facing us in November, not the least of which are going to be the U.S. Senate. Talarico is polling quite well. He pulled over 1.2 million votes statewide in his Democrat primary race. and that outstripped either one of our Republican candidates by more than 10%. So we need to be aware that the Democrats, I'm not trying to say that they're a true threat, but we cannot allow the Senate or the House here in Texas to flip Democrat, because if we do, President Trump is in trouble. You all know that. It's going to be 2 years of impeachment after impeachment after impeachment, and we really don't need that. We need to make sure that President Trump retains a majority in the Senate. We need to make sure he retains a majority in the House. We need to recognize that the Democrat threat here in Texas is real, and we need to get energized as we go into November. I know you guys are ready for it. I know you can do it. You guys are the best, and I sure appreciate you. Thank you.
Before we get the next speaker, I have one more person that I want to thank. We have our two speakers tonight. Thank you, Nate Criswell. He was the one that was the person that got these speakers for us to come in here and speak to us. So I want to thank Nate for being here for us.
Yes, we do have a good club. We have a great club, and because of that, that's why those guys want to come and speak here, right? Because we've got a really good attendance, and we had a really good record for this election. I think wasn't almost everybody a member of this club? Yeah. The conservative club that went into our election. Anyway, we're really glad that Thomas Smith and Bo French have come to see us tonight. Bo French is a third-generation oil man. He's been in oil and gas industry for over 3 decades and a former Tarrant County GOP chair. Bo is running to end the Green New Scam, wants to rid DEI from RRC, and stop the Islamization of Texas. So let's welcome Bo French.
Well, I am so happy to be here with all of these great patriots in this room. I just want to start off and say that in all 254 counties in Texas, Hood County, I have the highest vote total, highest percentage. So where do you want me to stand?
Right there.
Doesn't matter. Okay. I don't like it, so I'm probably going to walk around a little bit.
That's okay.
Okay, so how many of you don't know who I am? Wow, okay, great. So that's going to make this easier. So I'm probably going to bore you a little bit with kind of the first part of what I say, and then we're going to get to the fun stuff in the second part. But I'll just briefly tell you a little bit about me. My name is Bo French. I grew up in Midland, Texas. Third generation oil business. My grandfathers were both in the oil business. My dad was in the oil business. And when I got out of school, I graduated from TCU, went to the TCU Range Management Program, and go Frogs. And I worked for my family for a couple of years on ranches and back and forth between the Midland office and the oil business. And if you recall, in the 90s, the oil business was not that great. And I said, Dad, listen, I think I probably ought to go learn how to do something else in case this oil business thing doesn't work out. And so I ended up leaving the family office and going and working for an investment firm. But we were focused on the energy sector. So that whole roughly 10 years, was very focused on the energy sector, not just domestically, but globally. And then in 2010, I got out of that business. You remember the financial crisis was not that great for a lot of investment firms. Ours actually did really well, but our biggest investors came to us and said, thank you for doing so well, but you are our best performing fund, but we got killed everywhere else, so we need our money back. So that's that ended that business. And then I just started doing kind of a one-off private equity and venture capital type deals in all different sectors, but including the energy sector. And then when my father died in 2013, my brothers and I took over his business. And so we've been very active in Midland in the oil business, since then. And so it is a passion for me. I get asked a lot, why the Railroad Commission, why do I want to run for that? And it's because it's an important industry for Texas. It is. We produce almost half the oil and gas in the United States, right here in Texas. And the Railroad Commission has nothing to do with trains. It is the regulatory agency over the oil and gas industry and the mining industry here in Texas. And so it's critically important. Think of it as like, the Secretary of there's an Ag Secretary over agriculture, there's an Energy Secretary over energy. That's what the Railroad Commission is for Texas. And so, look, I got interested in running for it because I started looking at things that my opponent, main opponent, is the chairman of the Railroad Commission. And under his tenure, he passed, spearheaded, and then they passed a bunch of brand new regulations that just went into effect in July. So they really haven't had a full effect yet. But what they were, imagine if Obama's EPA or Biden's EPA wrote a bunch of regulations to try to harm the oil industry. That's what we passed. That's what we have now. And so, when you think about the importance of energy, energy is security, energy is national security. We don't want to constrain our oil business. We want the business to be strong because it creates a lot of jobs. And so a lot of these regulations just far overstepped what that regulatory body ought to be doing. So I'm going to look to correct that. And then I ran the primary, as you know, because some of you already told me you voted for me, so thank you for that. There were 5 people in the race, and I was the only person in that race who had not run for that position before. One ran as a Democrat, one ran as a Libertarian, and then one ran as a Republican against Christy Craddock last cycle. So I was the only one who had not run, and then my opponent's name was Jim Wright. So Jim and I advanced to the runoff, but the way we did that is there was some polling that came out in January, and I think I was single digits. I mean, people were I wasn't even on the radar. And but we ran we've got an incredible team, and we ran a really good campaign. And what we did is we forced the incumbent. Nearly 70% of people voted against the incumbent, which is unheard of. He had the lowest vote percentage of any incumbent in the history of the Railroad Commission. So, it's clear that people got the message that he's not the right guy. The fact that he's like a mega donor to Democrats probably didn't help him. The fact that under his tenure as chairman of the Railroad Commission, they've actually increased the amount of contracts they were awarded via the HUB program, which is Texas DEI program. So the commission has gone from, if you rank all state agencies, including our most liberal universities, if you rank them as a percentage of their budget going to DEI spending, they went from 41st to now 9th. So in an era where all of us want to get rid of DEI, they've increased the focus on DEI. So I'll let them out on day one. So now the fun stuff. So that's kind of what I want to do as Railroad Commissioner. And there's some other things too. They've, for instance, there are regional offices in the Railroad Commission. How many of you are actually familiar in the oil business or familiar with the Railroad Commission? Not many, very usually. Usually there's a couple. It's a small percentage of who's going to be voting in this primary. But so I'll speak to you all. So there's regional offices in the Railroad Commission. Well, they've taken the power away from those regional offices, which really doesn't make sense to me because, the regional office out, say, in the Permian Basin is going to be very different than a regional office in East Texas. You have different water constraints. You have different topography. You're drilling wells, in different formations. And anyway, it just, one size fits all regulations don't make sense. And so they centralized the power in Austin. Well, I'm a big believer that if you're centralizing power with a bunch of bureaucrats in Austin, that's probably a bad thing. Other things that I would do is just, I look at it like I'm a business friendly, which really just means free market friendly, conservative. And I would argue that my opponent is just letting probably the environmental science majors who are now working in the Railroad Commission, they're the ones coming up with these regulations, and he's just rubber stamping them. Well, that's not good for Texas. It's not good for the industry. It's not good for the jobs that industry creates. So there's going to be a lot of changes when I'm elected. Now, how did I even get here? I'm a business guy. I'm not a politician. I think some of you already mentioned you follow me on Twitter. That's kind of where I became Twitter famous, I guess. But I did that, or that happened because a couple years ago, I live in Fort Worth. Tarrant County is the third largest county in Texas, 2.5 million people. And the county chair position opened up. And by the way, where did Greg go? Where is he? Yeah. Good luck. It's a thankless job. So that position opened up, and I ran for it and won because I was concerned about the direction of Tarrant County. You know, just like the Democrats think they can flip Texas, well, Tarrant County is really an integral part of that because it is such a large county, and it's almost a bellwether for Texas. And so the Democrats were really focused on, in 2018, Beto O'Rourke actually won Tarrant County against Ted Cruz. And you could argue that there were some other issues there, but I mean, it was close enough that people were like, wait a minute, so what's going on here? And then in 2020, Joe Biden won Tarrant County. Again, you could argue there were some, election integrity issues, and I'm the first guy to say that there probably was. I've seen enough evidence to be convinced of it. But what happens when Democrats win a county and take over a county? Republicans never win again. So I just knew that I live in Tarrant County, so I wanted to make sure that what we did was protected for the future. And so I ran, and I just said, look, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to raise more money than we've ever raised, and I'm going to spend it as a campaign. We're going to run a campaign on behalf of all the Republicans in Tarrant County, and we're going to flip this county back in the right direction. And so I think Trump won Tarrant County by about 5 points. We flipped a constable seat back from Democrat to Republican. So very, very proud of the job I did there. But really, what I did was, aside from all of that, I just said, hey, I have this platform, and for whatever reason, people want to know what the county chair thinks. So I'm just going to start talking about everything I think about. And all the problems I see that's going on in our society, in our culture, in our city, in our school boards, and our city councils. There's 30 whatever cities in Tarrant County and 20 whatever school boards. And so I just started looking at all that stuff, and I started doing these exposés on just the rampant LGBTQ stuff that they were doing, all the degeneracy there, all the DEI stuff, including the TCU. I picked on TCU a little bit, which I've said a lot of my friends. But I do that not because I want to harm these institutions. I want to improve them. I want to get rid of the DEI because I know that it's harmful to our society and to our culture. And so I started talking about those things, and obviously people picked up on that. And a couple of years ago, I started talking about Islam in Texas. And to my knowledge, I think I was the first elected official in Texas to really come out strong and talk about the threat of Islam. Now, why did I do that? Well, one, I've owned and operated businesses in the Middle East, so I kind of have a pretty good indicator, experience of the problem with the Islamists and what they want to do, protecting oil industry folks in both in Iraq and Mozambique and Libya and places like that, the garden spots of the world, I like to call them. And so I have a pretty good understanding of what their goals are, and you're probably insulated a little more from it here. And I looked, you don't have a mosque here yet, which is great, but we have 400 mosques in Texas. And most of them are hidden in the big cities, in the big metro areas in Houston and DFW, San Antonio, Austin, those kind of places. But they're coming. I guarantee you, you're going to have one here soon. And I like to say, do you know what the difference is? You hear the different terms of, a jihadist or, radical Islam. Do you know the difference between radical Islam and Islam is? Anybody? So radical Islam wants to kill you. We all know that. They want to either convert you, make you submit, or they're going to kill you. They openly say that. Regular Islam just wants the radical Islamists to do that to you. They're okay with it. So it's all the same. There's no difference. They all believe the same thing. They all read the same text. I've read it. It's very clear what they want to do. And so it's coming, and we're allowing it. And so I'm just knowing that that's the plan, and being frustrated with just sort of this lack of, nobody was talking about it in Texas. And so I just started talking about it all the time, doing exposés, and lo and behold, you get to this campaign cycle, and almost every candidate was talking about it. And I'm like, hallelujah, people are finally talking about it. And then you get to, the problem we had to ban Sharia law. And I'm like, hallelujah, 90, the best performing proposition we had in the primary. So people are waking up to it, which really gives me a lot of encouragement. But I would tell you this, we can't stop at banning Sharia law. And people ask me all the time, well, what can we actually do? And again, I just go back to something else I've said. Well, we've allowed this to come into our country. And it's not just the ideology, it's the people who bring it. So we've allowed, millions and millions and millions of Muslims to come into our country. After 9/11, when George Bush was on, who I was a huge supporter of, by the way, and knew him because he lived in Midland at one point in time. After 9/11, George Bush was telling us on TV all the time, Islam is a religion of peace. And post 9/11, George Bush doubled the Muslim population in the United States. Barack Obama then doubled it again. And then we had Joe Biden, and what a disaster that was. We had, estimates are north of 20 million people came into the country illegally. We don't know how many of those were Muslims. Now, the U.S. government official numbers say that there are 18,000 known people with terrorist ties who came to the country. That's just the ones they know about. Well, think about it. 9/11 was 19 people. 18,000 of them are here? Minimum? So we have a real problem, and I think, look, the threat of terrorism obviously is, we've had, 5 terrorist attacks in the last couple of weeks in America. So obviously that is a problem that we need to be focused on, but I'm actually more concerned about just the civilizational and cultural shift that we're watching in this country. I'm 56 years old. I've seen in my lifetime, and been involved in conservative politics, and all my life, our leaders have said, Republicans have said, we're small government, we're low taxes, we're low regulation. We don't really want to fight on all those social issue things because those are really losing issues, and we'll turn off people, and we need to be a big tent, and all those things. And I look around as a conservative, what if we conserve?
Yeah, really, no kidding.
What's happened to our culture? I'm looking around this room, and it's, pretty unified here, I would say. But you go into DFW, there are entire cities that don't look anything like the Christian America that we know. They're putting up, statues for Diwali and whatever, all that is. They're building mosques right and left. Pretty soon they're going to be, playing the call to prayer, just like they are in Michigan. I'm sure you've seen those videos, and in New York. Yeah, and so it's coming. Now, we can either stop it or we can not stop it. So I argue that we need to deport every single one. I don't care if they're born here, if they're a citizen, they all need to go. Every last one. So I think, my campaign has gotten a lot of attention because I say these things, and I was kind of the first person to really say these things. And there are 100 million people in America who need to go. We have 50 million illegals, and we have 50 million foreign visa holders here. And I would argue that all of them need to go. Now, we could probably make an exception here and there, and we all know someone who came here and whatever. I get that. But we need to shoot for the moon because our country and our culture depend on it. Because I know I've got young kids. My kids are still high school and middle school. And I worry about what this country is going to look like for them and for their kids. Because I've already seen just such a dramatic change in my lifetime. Actually, some of my kids are like, Dad, can we move out to a smaller town? So I get that question a lot. It may happen. I won't disagree. So that kind of just sums up a little bit about why I'm here and what I'm doing. The landscape for the runoff is pretty simple. He and I both got pretty much the same vote total in the election. But he is just like when you think of Rhino, you think of this guy. He actually said one time in something on Twitter. I should call it X now. I still call it Twitter. He said one time he doesn't have an ideology. Think about that. He's running in the Republican primary and doesn't have an ideology. I'm sorry. I want all of my elected officials, everyone. From dog catcher on up. I want everyone to be outspoken America First warriors who are fighting for the values of this country. What are they going to do? I get it that, a lot of the issues I talk about don't necessarily fall under the purview of the Railroad Commission, obviously. But a lot of these issues didn't fall under the purview of being a county chair either. But I talk about them a lot, and I would argue that I helped move the Overton window so that more people are talking about these things. And so if you think for a second that I'm just going to go check a bunch of boxes, sitting up there on the Railroad Commission and only focus on the oil and gas industry and the mining industry, you're mistaken. I'm going to be in Austin hammering the legislature, hammering the governor to do the things that I know that voters care about. When I go to groups like this, I'm just going to do it right now. How many people in this room are worried about the Islamification of Texas? It's 100%. Every time. Every time it's 100%. And so, we need to start taking dramatic steps. And frankly, some of these steps are going to make people uncomfortable. But they have made us uncomfortable all of my life. They chastise us for going to church, for being pro-life. All the issues that, they tell us that we shouldn't really fight on. The left has been attacking us systematically in every institution. They've infiltrated every institution. And so it is time that we fight back. Someone said, go on offense a minute ago. I totally agree. We need to be on offense, not just defense anymore. Being a conservative doesn't mean just trying to slow down the pace of decay that we've witnessed over the last number of decades. So, I appreciate you all having me here tonight. I'll answer some questions, but let me just close with this. April 6th, we're having an event up in Fort Worth. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have some surprises to announce. I'd love for you all to come. It's going to be a big party. We'll feed you dinner. So if you want to come to that, you can find it on my Twitter, or I think there's a link on my website. Or if you don't have any of that, you can come talk to me and I'll get some information. Or John's here today, he can help me. John over there, in Ted Cruz sweatshirt. He's helping my campaign. But I appreciate you all, and let me ask some questions. What do you have for me?
So have any of the other people that were in the race that did not make the runoff, have they endorsed yet?
Not yet. I've had a meeting with one of them, and I'm optimistic about that one. The Democrat, I'm not even going to talk to. I don't think that's worth my time. And then the guy who was a libertarian, I don't think he's going to get involved in the race either way. But I don't think it's not something that's needed. But the one guy I've talked to, I actually probably have the best relationship with of any of the other candidates, and he apparently started a podcast or some kind of show or something. He asked me to come on the show. So anyway, I feel like that might happen one of these days. But we have some other big endorsements. I didn't even mention that. I've been endorsed by. So if you know of a conservative state rep, they probably endorsed my campaign, because almost all of the actual conservatives have. And then some of the very conservative congressmen have as well. So all the actual conservatives are rallying around my campaign, which is really nice. Because it's just clear. You want a conservative who's going to be an unapologetic America First warrior, or do you want a minor? It's just that simple.
Historically, each state in the United States will make people swear on a Bible to take the office, and they would swear to support the Constitution and God. Is there a way that we can use the Constitution and stop these idiots that are getting elected to Congress and end up getting in there? Because they're just laughing in our face when they say they just want to swear on the Quran, and they're up there.
So the question is, how do we stop these elected officials swearing in on a Quran? We have 2 state reps who are Muslims in Texas already, and then obviously we have some congressmen and women that are Muslims, and so who knows who Adela Omar is? Yes, I'm a big fan of hers. I've talked about her a lot. And just as an aside, I'll get to your answer. But how crazy is it that we imported 80,000 Somalis who are, excuse my language, but they're literally the dumbest people on earth. They're like the lowest IQ population on earth. And we bring them here. Of course, they're not going to assimilate. And so, what do? Like the Democrat Party, which my working theory on the entire Democrat Party is this: it is one giant money laundering operation to build money from taxpayers, from the people like us who work. That's why they're so organized. That's why, every one of these elections, the Democrats have this many people working doors and knocking doors, and it's because they're all getting paid. They're taking it from taxpayers. It's all going through this big, huge money laundering operation. And Minnesota is just a peek into that. Right? All of these people were getting, what they set up, daycare centers, fraudulent daycare centers, getting millions and millions, billions of dollars of taxpayer money. And lo and behold, Bill Omar, who 4 years ago couldn't rub two nickels together, and now she's got $30 million all of a sudden, making $180,000 a year in Congress. So we have to stop that. But that just goes to my point, your question. First of all, there ought to be a law. We need to put it into law that you have to swear in on the Bible. The swearing in on a Quran, which is, as Tom mentioned earlier, is a subversive government structure that is looking to supersede the U.S. Constitution. And I'm sorry, I'm just not okay with that. And so, I want politicians. Donald Trump had a quote years ago that I have used a lot, and it is, "We can just do things." And I really don't care what the law is. I care what the law is, but Republicans have not used the law that we have. That's what I really want to say. Republicans have not used the law or wielded their power. We always talk about Republicans get up there and they don't ever do anything. Democrats always do everything. And so I'm a big advocate of Republicans for the first time. Let's actually wield power and do what we can do to address all of these issues. Don't be scared.
Okay. My question has to do with regulation, and I'm of the mindset of the drill baby drill. I like being energy independent and not relying on any other nation for our energy. With that said, I know that there is a relationship between the office you're running for and TCEQ. And TCEQ right now, their regulations that they have need to catch up with the data centers. And I think that data centers, and I bring in TCEQ because they're getting their permits through TCEQ to build their own power plants to power these mega centers. I'd like to know more, because there's that relationship between your office and TCEQ. I'd like to know your thoughts on changing some of the regulations to maybe put the brakes on how much energy these power plants are using in Texas.
Yeah, so if you can hear the question, it was specifically about TCEQ, which just generally speaking, I would say that we just need to get rid of TCEQ and start over. There's been some talk about how we could do that, and they've talked about, because the Railroad Commission is elected people and not appointed people, which I'd be a huge fan of, just rolling things like that under one body, so that because it is all related. But yeah, I think that a lot. I get asked about the data centers a lot. I know Matt's worked on that a lot, and appreciate the work he's done there. I'm not an expert on the data centers, because they're not looking at building any in Fort Worth. They're looking to build them out in places like this. So that's something I need to bone up on a little more. I'll just be candid. But it does appear like Texas is ground zero for wanting to be the data center capital of the world. And I think it's probably going to happen because there seems to be, billions of dollars behind it, and like I said, people in cities aren't affected by it, but communities like yours are. And so we're going to have to figure out how to balance that in an appropriate way. So I'm hopeful that we can find that solution that works. There's lots of, I don't know why they want to build one right here. We can go out, way further out in West Texas, and put it somewhere. But then you have a water issue, right? And so, but I was talking to a friend of mine who knows more about this than I do. And one of the things he said was that the new silicon, the new chips that they're getting ready to start using in the data centers use something like 1/100th of the amount of cooling water that the current system does. So hopefully there's, just with technology, there's also a way that we can limit, how much water is used. And there's talk about, recycling essentially the water that's produced from drilling. There's talk about, how we can use that in a way that doesn't affect, the groundwater that you need in a community like this. So, I'm not an expert in that, but it is, we face challenging times because Texas is a growing state. And, I think often, I've said this before, a lot of Republicans just want the growth, like growth at all costs. And I have long advocated for not all growth is good. Some growth is not good. And just like having, millions of new voters in Texas that aren't American citizens, that's not a good thing. So,
Right.
I've pushed back in Fort Worth a lot and built a lot of apartments. And I just said, we have totally sunk ourselves by allowing all these apartments in because guess who lives in apartments? Democrats. Right? So no wonder Fort Worth is turned pretty blue. But so when you push out single families, in the rural communities, you build high density apartments, you're going to end up with a bunch of Democrats.
That's right.
So I call them line go up Republicans. They just want the line to keep going up, the growth. But I think in all these issues, we need to look at what's best for us, for Texans, for the people who are here. My family's been in America since the 1600s. Fought in the Revolutionary War. Both sides of the Civil War. Came to Texas in the 1800s. So this place matters to me, and I know it matters to you. I can tell by the look on your face, and we got to fight for it. Yes, sir.
Being a candidate for the Railroad Commission, we have some oil-related issues internationally, both Venezuela and now the Strait of Hormuz. Do you have any perspective over how the United States should be leveraging?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of kind of the Don Roe doctrine, as Trump has talked about, a play on the Monroe Doctrine. There's a reason why Trump has focused on Venezuela and Iran. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. Iran has the third largest oil reserves in the world. And 20% of the world's oil goes through the Straits of Hormuz, because that region obviously is very oil rich. So, Iran, I'm old enough to remember, every night when there was only 3 channels on TV, I see a lot of nodding heads in here, and every night on the news, this day 347 of the Iran hostage crisis. So Iran has been at war with us and our values for 47 years. I'm generally anti-war, but I've always said if we do go to war, we need to overwhelm them and kill them all immediately, and not do these 20-year things. So I think Trump believes that too. It seems like they're trying to do this as cleanly as possible without committing ground troops. Even though Trump says a lot of things, but I would say never judge Trump on what he says, because he's always in negotiating mode, trying to apply leverage mode, but judge him on what he does. And so I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic that at the end of the day, there will be no ground troops in Iran, and we'll have a friendlier government there that's a little bit more pro-Western like it used to be, and they won't try to hold the world oil markets hostage by limiting the traffic through the Straits of Hormuz.
First of all, I ask that that oil and pipelines aren't the only facilities in the state. Usually they get all the attention. I believe you're going to do great things in this position, but how do I know that it's not just a stepping stone to another position? With all due respect,
That's a fair question, and what I would tell you is I never really wanted to be a politician, so it's not my goal. I'm a business guy, and that's how I approach what I'm going to do at the Railroad Commission. I don't pretend to be an expert on every issue, but what I have done my entire career is analyze businesses, figure out how to make things more efficient, look at regulations, and so I'll bring that perspective to the Railroad Commission. And look, I just want Texas to be a stronger state. I want America to be a stronger country. and I want to protect Texans and our jobs in the oil industry because that's important. And so, for instance, rolling back some of those new regulations that they just put in place, which, by the way, increased costs on the operators. So what does that do? If the cost is higher to produce the oil, that means we have to have a higher oil price for those companies to keep producing oil. So what does that mean? It means you're going to pay more at the pump, right? So, I mean, look, as Texans and someone who's in the oil business, high oil prices are fun for a little bit, but when you see, like, I'm driving out here, your guys' diesel price is a little lower than it is in Fort Worth. I filled up today, it was $5.30 a gallon for diesel. So, obviously that's not good. That really hurts everyday people, in the pocketbook. So we have to, in my view, the best way to handle, what's good for the oil business is to not have $30 oil prices. Obviously that would be killing, but lower the cost to produce so that even at a slightly lower cost, the companies can stay in business, keep producing oil, and keep all those jobs going. So that's what's important to me. And as for the future, I have no idea. I never thought I'd be right here. So I'm focused on this and hope that I can do a good job and make Texas stronger. Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? All right, you can find more information on me. We've got some push cards here. John's got them somewhere. And then gofrench.com. Or if you're on Twitter, if you're not on Twitter, I highly recommend you get on Twitter because that's where all the political action actually happens. I do very little on Facebook. Everything I do is on Twitter with GoFrenchTX on Twitter. So I thank you all and look forward to seeing y'all again sometime. Thank you.
Do you have something to do, team? Okay. So,
Yes.
somebody left a jar up here.
That's mine.
You want to talk a minute on it?
Yeah.
Real quick?
Real quick, I'm quick.
Hey, so I want to encourage you guys, keep going with these things. So I don't know if you even started, but this is mine. There's a new Hyundai in there. So you guys know that this is my 360, I guess it's not my jar, it's my 360 bottle. But this I put in about $20 a week. And that plan for this is that when our candidates are running, that we can support them. It takes money during these campaigns, so thank you.
That's a big deal. If you just wanted to do it a month, if you put $25 a month in a jar, and that you would have around $300 in a year. And $300 goes a long way on a local campaign. And then if you started multiplying the people in this room with their $300, oh my goodness, what we could have. So everybody think about that, $25 a month, throw it in a jar, and then you have something to give to our candidates when they start to run.
Thank you, Sharon.
Okay. So, I believe that's our program tonight. Do we have Wes? You want to sing us out, Wes? Want to sing?
Do it from there. See the
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, wide with all.